Welcome back. This week, the Florida legislature kicked off its 60-day session, and one of the very first bills legislators took up was Senate Bill 168, the Tristin Murphy Act. Now, if you've watched this show, you know Tristan's story. In our documentary Warehouse, The Life and Death of Tristan Murphy, we revealed how the state has failed to properly treat people with mental illnesses who end up in the criminal justice system. Tristan was a schizophrenic sentenced to prison on a littering charge. And 63 days after arriving at a prison in South Dade, he killed himself with a chainsaw. Ever since then, his mother, Cindy, has been fighting to make changes so that what happened to Tristan doesn't happen to anyone else. Now, to be honest, it is nearly impossible to effect real change in a system as complex and as bureaucratic as the criminal justice system. But there was something about Tristan's story that resonated with a lot of people, including Senate President Ben Albritton, as he made clear in his speech opening the legislature on Tuesday.
Learning about Tristan's story and spending time with his parents, Cindy and Dennis, has had a tremendous impact on me. We're proud to move this bill forward with their support. I'm grateful to Jim DeFeedy for telling Tristan's story. It moved me deeply.
A few hours later, the bill, sponsored by State Senator Jennifer Bradley, had its first hearing in the Senate Criminal Justice Committee. In a few moments, you will hear Cindy read a letter from Tristan's son, Cody. It left everyone speechless and, for that matter, in tears. But before we get to that, one of the key moments in the hearing was the testimony by Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Prumell. It was his deputies who arrested Tristan on the littering charge. It was his jail where Tristan was held in an isolation cell for hundreds of days. And it was on his watch that Tristan's mental illness worsened. As you can imagine, Sheriff Prumell was featured in my documentary about Tristan's case, and not in a very positive way. Now, some sheriffs may have responded to that type of coverage by dismissing what happened. But to his credit, Sheriff Prumell wanted to find a solution. Here's what he told the committee.
Since I became sheriff 12 years ago, I'd like to think that a lot of my policies and programs that I put in place saved lives and helped people. Unfortunately, there are individuals that still fall through the cracks. Tristan Murphy was one of them, and he fell through the cracks in my county.
One of the steps Sheriff Prumell took after our documentary aired was to set up a meeting between Senate President Ben Albritton and Cindy Murphy. And it was out of that meeting that this bill began to take shape.
Since that time, myself, Judge Leifman out of Miami-Dade County, began working on the language for this bill. And we worked with Senate staff, we worked with state's attorneys, and we worked with the mental health professionals to put this bill together. This bill is going to save lives. This bill, this legislation is going to provide options of treatment. Most individuals who get that treatment, and the sooner they get that treatment, they become stable and they become contributing members of society. But we need to fix this system.
State Senator Jason Pizzo said he hopes this bill will make law enforcement's job easier.
To the law enforcement community, it's never been fair since I was a prosecutor having to house mental health cases when they should have been somewhere else. It's not fair to you and your staff at all. And we need to do better instead of just warehousing.
Caroline McLean, the executive director for NAMI in Florida, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, spoke in support of the bill.
We get about 250 calls a month. The most heartbreaking start with, my family member has been arrested. My family member's in jail. What do I do? And while the family is struggling to get information and to find out how to help their loved one is struggling with disrupted treatment, the possibility of job loss, housing loss, isolation from their natural and professional support systems, and in the worst cases, their lives.
This point was reinforced by the sponsor of the bill, Senator Bradley, who has been one of Cindy Murphy's strongest advocates in the Senate.
So many families in the state of Florida just live in fear that their loved ones with mental illness are going to have contact with the criminal justice system and not be able to get out. There are no off-ramps, there's no opportunities for diversion, there's no treatment. It was talked about earlier that the competency restoration, I've worked on competency restoration bills. It takes 25% of our adult mental health budget. The goal is not even stability and recovery. The goal is just to be able to identify who the judge and the prosecutor are in the courtroom. 70% go back, they're released, or they're on probation with no mental health treatment. It's just a broken system. And this provides a roadmap. It provides off-ramps. It provides resources instead of incarceration for the mentally ill who find themselves in the criminal justice world. It prevents them from getting sucked into the deep end of the system with horrific consequences. So hopefully this brings some comfort, some sense of hope on the part of families who are trying to support their loved ones with severe mental illness, that the system sees them, recognizes that their challenges are behavioral or therapeutic and don't need incarceration.
But as you can imagine, the most powerful testimony came from Cindy Murphy herself.
Tristan should still be here with us today, and he would have been with us today if a lot of the provisions in this bill had been in place. He clearly should have been diverted out of the criminal justice system at several different points. There were lots of just different times when, if different decisions could have been made, if different options had been available, he could have gotten the help that he needed. For those of you who might be here and don't know what happened to Tristan, I'm going to say it because it hasn't been said yet. But my son Tristan, after being found guilty of littering and being sentenced to a prison, lasted 63 days in the Department of Corrections before he killed himself with a chainsaw. It was horrific, and it's something that his son, Cody, and we'll have to live with. And even though we've been very careful not to see pictures and not to read too many details about that day, your mind just sort of fills in the gaps and pictures flow into your head even if you try to keep them away. I don't want that situation to happen to anyone else, and I am really so thankful and grateful that you all have recognized Tristan in this way. To me, it's a big apology that things should have been different, things should have been better, and I accept that apology. And really am excited that this move forward. My whole goal since this happened to Tristan has been to make sure that it doesn't happen to anyone else, that no one else's family has to go through this, that people get the treatment that they need, that they get diverted early on.
This was Cindy's second trip to Tallahassee. She had come up last year to meet with Bradley, Pizzo, House Speaker Danny Perez, and others. On this trip, Tristan's son Cody asked to come along. Throughout the hearing, he sat next to his grandmother. He had written out what he wanted to say to the committee, and Cindy read it for them.
My name is Cody Murphy. I'm 17. Tristan was my dad. I lost my dad the day after my 14th birthday when he took his own life in a Florida prison. But I lost more than that. I lost the last 4 years of his life. I was 9 when he first got caught up in the criminal justice system. Over the next 4 years, he spent hundreds of days isolated in a county jail waiting for a judge to determine that he was incompetent to stand trial. That time was torturous for me, Cody, and for my grandparents, and most of all for my dad. What he did was wrong, but he needed medication, not punishment. As a 17-year-old, I have to wonder what kind of world I'm growing up in that would treat someone so broken so badly. When he was on his meds, he was my dad, a dad who loved me and wanted to be my dad. I miss him, and I shouldn't have to do that. Please pass this bill so other kids, other families, and other inmates don't have to go through what we did. There has to be a better way. Thank you.
Thank you.
The bill passed unanimously in the Criminal Justice Committee. The next stop is the Senate Appropriations Committee. A companion bill is also now moving in the House. The hope by the sponsors is that the bill will be voted on by the full Senate and the House in early April. We'll certainly continue to follow it. We'll be right back after the break.